I really appreciate the opportunity to report to the Center for Civic Life on Kettering research that may be relevant and helpful in the work that is being done through the center. It's great work. As an Alabamian, I'm very pleased to see that taking place, and I want to contribute anything that I can. But I'm speaking to you from my garage, and I'm in my garage with a computer because the COVID virus is keeping us at some considerable distance from one another. Me in my garage, you wherever you are now. What I've learned about this new technology, this Zoom technology, is that it has very different requirements and tolerances when compared to face-to-face meetings. If this were face-to-face, I would feel at liberty to go on at length with stories and jokes and all kinds of things. But there seems to be a natural limit to tolerance for this screen. About 5 to 10 minutes is as far as people will put up with it, and then they'll fade off to something else. So I'm going to limit myself to some brief comments. And then I'm going to suggest that what you might want to do is not listen to me, but listen to one another. We're just now trying to see if we can have a conversation rather than just presentations on this media. The forum folks have started using Zoom, and it's working pretty well for them. Last week, Kettering had a Zoom meeting with over 180 people in 44 countries. And we tried to get a conversation going. It was a little tough at first because people feel like they're on the stage and they make a speech that kind of goes on, but eventually we got some interaction because the moderator has to be able to spot folks in the audience and call on them to react to a comment. So I'm going to make 3 or 4 points very quickly, things in our research that seem to me to be relevant to the work that you're doing. The first one is obvious, that the country is hit by 3 crises that followed one after the other, like pounding blows or tsunamis. The first, of course, was the pandemic. That was soon followed by collapse of the economic system, which was soon followed by racial tensions and discord prompted by the death of people like George Floyd. So just 1, 2, 3. And the country is really unsettled right now. It's an unusual time. I don't think even in the 50s and 60s, when there was a fair amount of trouble on into the 70s, that the country experienced anything quite like this. But there are issues arising that need to be addressed. Racial conflict, pandemics, economic collapse are big topics. But out of these big topics are coming very specific issues. For example, right now as we're talking, people are deciding trying to decide about opening schools. What should we do? Can we open them safely? And should safety be our first regard? What about good education? Can we open them safely and at the same time have good education. And then there are another set of concerns. Who should be making these decisions? Should you and I be making them? Should the school board be making them? Should Montgomery or Washington be making them? Should we be guided by experts, or there are other considerations? Now, those kind of issues that are cropping up cry out for deliberation, because right now we're in the midst of impulses and hasty reactions, and that's not going to yield the kind of good judgment we need for these issues. The center knows a lot about deliberation. This would be an opportunity to take advantage of what the center knows about deliberation and help local communities apply them to the decisions that are going to have to be made locally. That seems to me relevant. Here's another thing that we've come up in our research. Some of you know, and a fellow named Harry Boyd. Harry Boyd was on the front lines in the American Civil Rights Movement, and he later was in South Africa working with the anti-apartheid groups. And as he looked at the current situation, he said, what's going to happen is going to turn on how the issues that I just talked about are framed. And he said, what will prevent any kind of lasting change? And that's what we hope will come out of this turmoil. We hope that we'll have some lasting change and that future generations won't have to go over this again. And we know fundamental change is very difficult. There have been, for example, over a dozen commissions on police reform, and they have not materially changed the situation. So there's much to be done to make lasting change. But Harry says, if you frame these issues in an accusatory fashion, if the discussion is about who to blame, you're never going to get any lasting change, because whoever gets blamed is going to react later on, and people are not going to be able to come together. And the only way change lasts is when people have come together, not in full agreement necessarily, but able to move forward. Now, who in Alabama knows something about framing issues so that deliberation is more likely than anybody else in the state? It's the network around the centers, around the center. So here is something that is very relevant for what you do. And I'm really delighted to see that you are moving to local communities to work on localized issues. That's where the decisions are being made now that are so important. The third bit of research that is relevant comes from this new report that we're getting out, which a year ago you introduced. You were the first to introduce it with a panel led by your federal judge. And it goes like this. Americans have lost confidence in the authoritative institutions, the press, the medical establishment, the scientific establishment, legislative bodies, institutions of higher education, you name them. And if you'll check the statistics, in most cases, public confidence has dropped, not just a little bit, but to a great degree. So we started with President Lincoln's plea for a government of, by, and for the people. You ask people today if we have a government of the people, they'd say, I'm not sure. By the people, people would say, you got to be kidding. for the people, maybe for some people sometimes, but not a lot. So we're suggesting, our research has led us to suggest adding another proposition. What about with the people? What about with the people? We've been frank to say it's only an idea, it's only a perspective. We don't know what its application would be, but if institutions worked with people, it might do something to lessen the gulf and divide that's now separating the American people from its governing institutions. It's not a far-fetched idea. It already occurs when disaster hits. We've seen it in Alabama with hurricanes and tornadoes. The first responders are not the government. They can't get there. The roads are gone. There's no power. So they live or die, people depending on what their neighbors and friends do. And people have responded. But that's not established policy. That happens occasionally and only under dire circumstances. Maybe it should happen more often. We noticed in our research when looking at schools, if people said, we have good schools, they would say almost in the next breath, and we're involved with it. Well, come on. Why would people who are involved feel like what they were involved with was okay? It's just human nature. We are much more likely to take responsibility for what we've made ourselves than for what somebody has made for us. And there are a lot of things that only citizens can make. I often use the example of healthcare, which is front and center now. It's great to have good physicians and effective hospitals and other medical personnel. But human beings can care for other people. Hospitals can care about you, for you, but only people can care about you. And their ability to care about you has shown clinical evidence that it in fact is healing. So there are things that only citizens can do. And maybe we're at a point where citizens need to do more of those things, and we expect that of ourselves as citizens. Citizens are often viewed by our institutions as objects. They are the patients for the medical programs. They are the clients for the law schools. They are the consumers for the business schools. But to have the change that we want and the democracy that we want, we're going to have citizens who are producers, who can make the things that supplement and complement what our institutions can't do. So opportunities to develop a with strategy in every aspect of Alabama's life, beginning locally, may be something worth considering. Since there is no blueprint, there's no model, there are no best practices to follow, we're going to have to figure it out for ourselves. And we're going to do that by experimenting. Some things will work, some things won't work, but if we do it right, we'll all learn. And if we learn, we'll do it better the next time. So those are, in brief, my reports on the research coming from the Kettering Foundation that seems to be relevant. Now, I think it would be interesting for you all to talk to one another. I'll sit back and listen, but I'd love to hear people talk about what kind of issues are coming up locally and how they're being discussed, how they're being framed. That, I think, would be interesting to everybody. It would be interesting to hear people talk about any collaboration between citizens and governments on whatever the problems are. it would be great to hear right now what's going on locally, because what we're hearing is a lot of activity at the local level, more so than at the federal level. What is that? There's some great lessons in those stories about people coming together, not just being charitable and helpful, which is good, but actually coming together and organizing themselves to provide assistance and relief. We need to capture those stories to use them to remind future generations. So I would like to sit back and, as we always do, have maybe a period of awkward silence where everybody just looks at each other on the screen. But maybe somebody will call on somebody, or maybe somebody, the Spirit will move them, and they'll want to give us a brief report in Alabama, and we'll have what is the real genius of the center, which is a conversation. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and listen.